it's wonderful to have you here today for the third in the series of sessions that the Kesha Suri Foundation is hosting. This one is entitled Queering Corporate Spaces. It follows the previous two, which were building queer livelihoods and queering education. After Section 377 was struck down in the Supreme Court, and the so-called decriminalization happened, corporate India has started to open its doors, right, to being open to the idea of practices that are more diverse, that are certainly much more inclusive towards the LGBTQ plus community. This includes kind of very deliberate efforts to recruit more LGBTQIA talent, introducing policies that are gender neutral, more importantly, introducing anti-discrimination policies. We've seen a lot of movement on insurance for same-sex partners, also, for example, period leaves for the trans community. And many of these initiatives have hit the headlines, right? And I guess what we wanted to do today was dig into that a little bit. Like, where does corporate India really stand with regards to diversity and inclusion, and what can we collectively do to queer those corporate spaces, right? So I'm very excited about the discussion that we're going to have today. By way of introduction, my name is Ali Potia. My pronouns are he, him. I am a gay man living in Singapore. I grew up in Bombay, but have lived in Singapore for the last 13 years. And it's very interesting for me because as a partner at McKinsey and Company, my day job is leading McKinsey's retail practice in Southeast Asia. And what I jokingly refer to as my gay job is to lead diversity and inclusion for McKinsey in Asia. And so, I kind of have a little bit more of a regional view towards D&I practices for the LGBTQIA community, from Japan to New Zealand and of course to India. And then, being physically located in Singapore, which is, a country that, still has Section 377 on its books. It's been fascinating, even from a bit of a distance, to observe the movements in India, right? Particularly since decriminalization, the huge strides that corporate India has taken. And so to that end, I'd like to now introduce our wonderful panelists for the day. And I'm just going to invite them to introduce themselves in a couple of minutes, maybe share a personal story. And so, Ankita, do you want to go first?
Sure, Ali. Thank you so much for the description about the panel today. We are also very, very excited that how this panel will go. Let's introduce myself. My name is Ankita Mehra, and I'm at this point working with CareerNet as a lead diversity and inclusion. And I'm 24 years old, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. My journey has been mostly into creating opportunities for LGBTQ communities in India corporate world by providing job opportunities. I'm an ex-head of Curious, which was one of the 3 or 4 brands which has been out to give employment opportunities to LGBTQI plus community. And you can say that I have worked with multiple startups. I worked with the multinational companies also. I have faced discrimination myself, and from all the learnings I've had in school, college, and the workplace, it's something that I want to build is mostly creating a safe place, a workplace, a better place for the LGBTQI plus folks, right? And that's what my dream is. That's what my goal is. And I can go to any level to achieve it. And wonderful that in India, corporates are supporting enough to make a change like this. And I'm also a KSF fellow. So I was selected in 20 most inspiring youth of India. And they have trained me to be a better person myself. So if I'm being a better and inclusive person, then only I can expect people to be inclusive towards us. So yeah, learning the journey and respecting everyone, and being a part of panels to understand every aspect of it. And that's why I'm here. Thank you, Ali.
Wonderful. Thanks, Ankita. Amit, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi everyone. I'm Amit. My name is Amit Kekre. Well, what I do is I look after strategy at a national level at the Mudra Group, which is India's one of India's largest communications and advertising agency. At a personal level, I come from a rural background, born to a farmer family. Spent my childhood on farms. Um, Wanted to be a doctor, ended up studying microbiology, and then somehow by accident got into advertising, as in studying advertising, and fell in love with it for the simple reason that um, through the course that I was studying, I realized that brands are a fantastic, and a really potent tool to impact human behavior and to change the way people think about not just about brands, but about their life, about their times, and about the culture they're in. And over the last 23 years that I've been in the business now, uh, I've worked in various parts of the world, including India, Australia, uh, Southeast Asia, all of it in the strategy role. About 3 years ago, I started the DNI sort of focus at DD Mudra Group when I took on the chapter chairmanship or chairpersonship, if you will, of Open Pride, which is Omnicom's ERG for LGBTIQ inclusion at workplace. Since then, I think, I cannot uh, be more grateful to the organization and also sort of, to everything that's happened, because this is one thing that I have, through my own personal struggles, in fact, wanted to change, not just for me, but for everybody who is at workplace, and to see that, to herald change, not just through brands, but also heralding change within the organization. So yeah, that's where I am right now, and it's lovely to be a part of this panel, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Fantastic. Abhina?
Thank you. First of all, Ali, thank you so much for giving this opportunity. I would also like to be very congratulate all of you to be part of this fantastic panel, and I look forward for interaction with all of you. I would also like to congratulate Keshavsuri Foundation for completing 2 brilliant years of inclusion and diversity. I think that is brilliant work. I think path-breaking work that has any corporate has put in India. My name is Abhina Aher. I'm a transgender activist of India. I've been working for 25 years now in areas of HIV/AIDS, human rights, LGBT rights. And I've not worked in India, but I've also worked across the globe. I've been in part of the various networks like Asia Pacific Transgender Network, International Trans Reference Group, and various other networks. I have established first International Trans Fund for the globe. I'm part of the steering committee member of that group. I established first ever transgender dancing group, which is inclusive of LGBT, which is called as Dancing Queen. This was the first initiative that has been taken to use dance as a forum of advocacy with the corporate world and talking about gender and sexuality issues prominently. And I also established 5 years back, like first ever organization which constitutes trans men and trans women together, called as TWEET Foundation, Transgender Welfare, Equity and Empowerment Trust. Currently, I'm working as a key population expert, especially working with women in sex work, people who inject drugs, transgender people, men who have sex with men, and at the same time, people living with HIV, providing support to the Ministry of Health. And most of my work involves in creating policies, providing technical support to national health response, and also providing technical support to the various community-based organizations and foundations that are working for education.
Thank you, Abhina. And last but certainly not least, Aditya.
Yeah, hello, hi everyone, and thank you, Keshwasuri Foundation, for inviting me for this lovely panel. My name is Aditya Batavia. I like Amit. I'm coming from small town of Gujarat, Rajkot. Spent my entire life in Gujarat. Spent 25 years in Gujarat. Also, I'm coming from non-English speaking background. Studied all the studies I've done in Gujarati medium. It's 4 years back I started speaking English. So pardon me if my pronunciations are not correct, or if I fumble at certain point of time, because English is not my first language. Yeah. I spent 10 years in this space. I say that I'm a diversity and inclusion professional at ThoughtWorks India, and I also have pretty diverse career. I have spent 5 years in manufacturing, one in construction, 3 in retail, and now 1.5 in IT. So I have a pretty diverse career, and with Abhina, I think I'm also part of the board member of Tweet Foundation, working with Abhina for the empowerment and equity of a trans community. So that's pretty much about me.
Fantastic, Aditya. My family is originally from Rajkot as well.
Oh.
So
Acha.
if we need to slip into Gujarati weekend.
That's good idea.
Me too. I can also understand Gujarati a little bit.
There's this interesting thread that's running through it a little bit in all of our stories, in that Amit, you kind of changed professions from the medical profession into advertising. But by the way, I like every kind of smart kid on a scholarship was studying computer engineering, and then decided that it wasn't for me, and ended up studying geography. And then stumbled into the world of business at some point. And Aditya, you've had many careers yourself, and I think that is kind of one of the themes that I'd like to explore a little bit, which is in your journeys as becoming the LGBTQIA leaders or allies that you are, what has been the one peak experience that has kind of shaped your worldview with regards to diversity and inclusion in the corporate space? And we can do this popcorn style whenever you feel like you're ready to pop. Feel free to jump in. For whomever wants to kick us off.
I can share my experience. So with with all the HR degree and a psychology degree, I'm a trans man, and this is a time when I was uh, deciding to go for a transition, and it was a pretty difficult for me because I was not sitting in a small town of Gujarat. At that time, I think I was working in Ahmedabad, but still there this. Concept of very stereotypical binary gender were there, and it's still there. And at the time I was struggling to find a single job which is inclusive, because at that point of time actually I lost my father when I was 18. So I had a family to manage. I have a family to take care of. I have my younger brother who was studying, my mother who was there. So for me, unlike a lot of people, it was not possible to leave the career and go for transition and come back. But it wasn't a choice for me, and I was looking for a company which can support me well while I transition. And I think at that point of time, I reach out, or I think there are three wonderful people who reach out to me, and when I was looking for a job, Madhumita, Mahesh, Natarajan, and Anupama. And they said, and at that time I think Future Group was there, and they were starting their DNA agenda, and I was the first person to who got hired like as a part of the DNA agenda. I think that's the time. I think if they were starting the DNA agenda, and I'm not saying that they had a great policy or they had great sensitization. No, nothing was there, but they were ready to support me. And I think that was a big experience for me, as a person, that if someone can support me and place me in a company who is a friendly company for me. And I think from there, I think my entire journey has started, that how can I support 10 other people or 100 other people, so that they can live the life which they want.
Thanks for sharing that, Amit.
Yeah, I think for me, it was never, it wasn't particularly one particular incident, I'd say, but I think it was like a string of, experiences that I went through personally as I struggled with my own sexuality and me trying to identify with it or assert it. And these were, ever since I started working, and I started working as a straight man many years ago. But even then, because of my sort of fluid nature of my sexuality, if you will, before I really discovered it, there were always these subtle sort of, comments or remarks or, you know, yeah, I mean, things like, oh, you wearing that, you must be, and I would want to say, what? Come on, complete your sentence. But they would never do that. And those kind of things. And I'd never say that I've faced visible discrimination because of the way I was, or because of the kind of clothes that I wore, or because of the company that I kept, or because of the attitudes that I had. But they were always, you know, I did feel that because of that, certain opportunities perhaps were not thought of as the right ones for me. Oh, wait a minute, there's a new business pitch that involves cricket. He won't get it, you know. And that's when you realize what the hell's going on. Uh, so there were these string of these events which were small perhaps in nature, and that culminated somewhere around 10 years ago, where I was really struggling. And then I sort of, when I kind of overcame my own inhibitions in terms of who I was and everything, I said that I didn't want anybody else to go through these incidents and experiences, however small they were in nature, because they may seem small on the outside, but what they make you feel on the inside it hits you quite deep at a personal level, and it sends you into a spiral which you keep on then overthinking and building your own narrative, which is sort of, which blocks you, and which blocks your own growth and blocks your own way of how you think of your own potential. I and I didn't want anybody else to go through that, and I thought, when I was always looking for an opportunity to correct this, for to do what I could do in this area. And I think when I found the opportunity to start DNI, especially from the point of view of the LGBTIQ community within the organization, I think that was just, eureka.
Ankita, Abhina, do you have a story to share?
Sure. I'll go.
You would like to go first?
Sure. So I have been a Air Force brat. When I talk that I'm an Air Force brat, my father is in Air Force, and that whole spectrum, and I'm very vocal about talking about Air Force, because first, they are not even women inclusive as much as we think that they are, or for them, for LGBTQ inclusion is that's too big. So I never came out to anyone till I was in college. I came out when I was 20-year-old to my father, but before that I had a whole of my own journey, because when I was staying in a small town and my father was getting transferred in small towns where you hardly see a queer person, you'll not know any other lesbian in the city, right? So you don't have success stories, you do not have parental success stories, you don't have a motivation to push, and you try to fit yourself in a circle where everyone is being following. I've tried coming out to my friends, but they were not understanding. And the only thing they used to say, Ankita, tu hai, तेरे को लड़कियां पसंद है, but मेरे को तू पसंद नहीं. Whenever I came out to them, they thought I was flirting with them, and I wanted to get in relationship with them. But that was not true. I was in a box for many years, and I always wanted short hair. There's a problem which lies with a lot of lesbians, as if like I have short hair, people will think that I want to be a man, but definitely I love my body and I want to be a female. And that was an explanation I had to give it to everyone. When I had my first haircut, from being a Punjabi girl to small hair was a hell lot of a journey in my family itself. I had to convince everyone to say that I need short hair, okay? And then in college also, people started misgendering me. "Eh, ladke idhar aa, hi mere londe idhar aa." That gang involvement started happening, and I was not quite comfortable with that. And I wanted to be in girls with talking something personal, and I didn't want to get into fights. In college, when all of these things are happening, I was not out. And as I mentioned about success stories, there were no success stories. Then in my teenage, when I was 19, I came out. I was very bullied in college school, and it was a continuous journey of bullying Ankita, right? And I had the anger in me, and I said that I have nothing to lose. I have really nothing to lose, because I wanted to I really wanted to quit my life. I didn't want to continue with my life because no one was understanding the side of me. Everyone was putting their own judgments on me, and I really didn't want that. I wanted to live myself. So I went to TV. I went on a show called Roadies, and that was the topmost huge show in India at that time. And I thought that my college folks watch it. Why don't I go and tell that there? And my leaders of that shows will support me. That's gonna sensitize hell lots of youth in India, man. I mean, I went there and I spoke my heart out. I came out on television, and then I came out to my father. And the way people used to look at me has completely changed, because for them, an influential character saying that it's normal, then only they will consider it being normal. Else, I've been shouting from years, it didn't come normal. That's how was a journey to accept myself. But what was the push for me to be in inclusive space for mostly when I started my first job, it was a call center job. And I was working there under a manager, and that manager's girlfriend have molested me in the washroom. Um, and this is a story when I was just entering the corporate world. I was just 20-year-old, and when that molestation happened, that person faced rejection, and that person's ego definitely got hurt. And that news was spread on the other way around, like, Ankita have done that. And it was easier for people to believe because I was out. I was i was known that I'm into women, and that person is a straight person, and that person can never do it. But that happened in front of everyone. I was a very hardworking employee. I was exceed expectations for almost 11 months. Not even one day I missed with unscheduled leave. I have given my proper results, but they judged me on the basis of my orientation. The manager started being very, what do you say, very partial towards me, and he used to like make me sit for days and nights, and he was not being friendly. I went to the HR. I told another manager that this has happened, even though that girl has informed later. But I informed before that girl informed anyone else, to few of my managers, that this has happened with me, and I didn't come to work for next 5 days because I was scared. I was molested, and this is never taken in consideration that a lesbian girl can get molested also from other girls. But the consideration will be taken only on the basis of orientation, and that's how my journey of being an ally started. Because I never wanted to be in multinational company after that first, but I did not want that other people who are working in MNC should leave their work because of this issue. So that's why we need to fix all these things before we let others step into the environment. Thank you. I'm done.
Ankita, thank you for sharing that story. It means a lot, and it really struck a chord. I'm grateful for you to share, and kudos to you for your resilience. And I think there are kind of lessons to be learned, both, I mean, obviously from an organizational standpoint, which is how does an organization respond, right, to an employee that is experiencing this, but also I think more importantly, and also for our viewers today, right, the lesson on how do you react as an individual, right? Like, are you going to kind of hold yourself back, or are you going to say, you know what, I'm going to take a leap and go somewhere else because I need to, kind of unleash myself, right, in an organization that will give me the space to do so. Abhina, is there a story that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I also come from a very middle class Maharashtrian background. It has been a very overwhelming journey for me where I stand right now. Because as a middle class Maharashtrian background, the only dream that was passed to me that get a government job. But at the same time, I was struggling with my sexuality and gender. Like at the 6, 7 years of age, I started cross-dressing myself, and I come from a dinosaur age, so we did not have phones. Like there was only desk phone or something like that, and the access to the information, especially for a person like me who comes from a vernacular background and can't speak and write English properly, and also cannot converse in English with other people, that has been a steep challenge. So throughout my life, I have struggled with various phobias that includes about feeling extremely dismissive by so many people because you have a challenge with the language, lack of knowledge about sexuality and gender. Because I used to feel that I'm the only one in my life who was experiencing something like that, and that's the reason why I should die. So I tried to commit suicide almost 3 times in my life. So but I wasn't successful at that point of time. And when throughout my life, I struggled with understanding who am I as well, because right from my heart and my mind, I knew I'm a woman, but at the same time, I was feeling attracted towards the guys, other men. So a lot of people call me as homosexual or a gay or something like that. I didn't know what does that mean, first of all, because I was not part of the sexual minority community also, and I didn't met anybody till almost the age of 20, 21 years. And at that point of time, the only way out for me was that I must complete my education, and I must get out of this country, because I think the more I stay in this country, the more I will get stigmatized, because people know me over here and I have to answer so many relatives and everybody. And if I just walk out of my this country, it would be easier for me because people are not bothered about anything else. And there was this very wrong notion about sexuality and gender at that point of time, that America mein sab chalta hai. If you go to England, America, that's all fine. You don't have to worry about it. And it's only when I started going there, I started understanding what kind of discrimination people face even from the LGBTI community. But at that point of time, it was very naive, and that was something which was like, okay, I'll get out of here and things will be fine. So at that point of time, the computers was newly introduced, and I learned computer, and I started teaching into the computer institute in a corporate sector, because I completed my graduation and I also completed my software engineering course. And at that point of time, I realized that is actually you can get bullied, and you can actually get discriminated. Of course, the school discrimination is always there, but once you get into the professional background, you can still be judged based on your attires, based on your how long your nails are. Are you wearing makeup or not? How are you sitting and how are you behaving and all those kind of things. So I remember there has been a lot of exploitations when I was teaching in the computer institute by a manager who was there, and similar like Ankita, I also faced an incidences where a manager tried to molest me or tried to do certain things that were inappropriate, and then at the end the blame came to my desk, saying that is I am out and open like this, that I'm feminine, I'm very expressive in my unisexual clothes. That's the reason why I was judged. In fact, the issue became so big that even the students start disrespecting me. So when I was teaching them computers, they were actually, kind of doing all sorts of cartoons and caricatures and names and everything that could be possible to make my life hell. And it was very disrespectful, because you were trying to establish a relationship with a person to teach, and at that point of time, the students are coming back with such kind of attitude. So that was my first instances, and then later I became part of the Humsafar Trust in 1998, and I was fortunate to come across Humsafar Trust because Ashok Rao Kavi, who's a founder member of Humsafar Trust and also open and out first gay of India, he gave me a lot of in-depth understanding. That it was the first time when I was touching and feeling a gay man. Besides that, there was men who was having sex with me, but that was just a sphere of moment when they were having sex, and then they did not wanted to associate it with me at all. So this was the first time when actually Ashok told me that being gay or being part of sexual minority is perfectly fine. You just this is not a vikruti, because all the vikruti is evam prakruti. Like for example, everything in the nature is natural, and you don't have to judge yourself so hard to understand what is right and what is wrong. And then I started working for Humsafar Trust. But the moment I left Humsafar Trust, I wanted to go back to the corporate sector, and I tried so many jobs. I had a software engineering degree, a diploma, and I had a graduation diploma. I had an experience working with NGO sector, but none of them were willing to employ me. In fact, a lot of that is, if you want to work here, you have to cut your hair. Like this is not allowed and expected in this sector. Even in call centers, I was not welcome, because the fact remains is that there was so much of discrimination over there, and I was in fact lot of in the lot of opportunities, because I was a trans person. I was not even entered into the premises of corporate sector to go and do the interviews. The gatekeeper was judging me based on my attire and perspective, and saying that is, like, आप यहाँ पे क्यों आए हो? Why are you here? And you're अभी दिवाली नहीं आई, होली नहीं आई, आप चले जाओ यहाँ से. Don't come here. Don't come for a begging over here, because this is a corporate sector. And I said, no, I come for a job. And they would, and then once, even if I could enter into the premises, and even I could reach to the HR, my documents were there and the male name, and I was looking like a woman. So there were so many disconnect into this, that did not had a policies to support perspective that I was having. And it was very difficult and insulting for me because they were calling me, they were misgendering me all the time. You know, so even if I used to call to the HR person, they used to call me sir. So it was a big misgendering for me that I used to call me, I'm a trans woman, and please call me as her or she. And they never used to respect that kind of spaces. Their HR policies were missing. So in various HR policies, I could see that the spouse was covered, the children's were covered, but I used to say to them, I'm not going to get married. I'm not going to have children. Right now, at least I'm having that kind of a status. And how come your HR policies are not, covering this perspective? And they used to say, no, no, this is a company rule and we can't change like that. And that was a big issue for me. So I kept working in social sector and I kept working here. I was a very early transgender batch of people who used to, and part of the Hijra community also, who dared to become part of the employment sector. Because a lot of the Hijras, when they become Hijras or become part of the Hijra, the only option that remains for them is either to beg or either to dance or either to do sex work. In fact, for 3 years of my time, I did not had work and I had to completely depend on sex work. I was taking 11 clients a day in the night. I used to start at 9 o'clock and I used to go up till 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. And that was all humiliating sexual activity where where somebody is actually, burning your body with the cigarette butts or putting knife on your throat and having unsafe sexual practices, or some day goons running behind you, or police snatching all the money, or you've been put up in a lockup. All sorts of experiences that I've had in my life. And sometimes I used to feel that is there must be a lot of people, a lot of Abhinas like me who wanted to enter into the job. And you know, the statistical information is that almost 37% of transgender people, transgender women especially, in one of the study it has been said that is they are literate and they can do job. But the fact remains is because the corporate sector world are not open to them, they still are struggling within this perspective. And that
Abhina,
was
have
the
you seen things? Have you seen things turn around at all with regards to the corporate sector's kind of
now
posture towards trans people?
now I see that happening. Now I see that happening, especially there are a lot of a lot of companies like Keshasuri Foundation was the first, in fact, Lalit group of hotels. I remember at that point of time when we started Peak Foundation 5 years back. Around 3 years back, I approached Lalit group of hotels, and we were working specifically on trans men, and they were the first one to hire a trans man into their reception. Lobby. They did not, because we were constantly telling that is so. A lot of people who wanted to hire trans people, but they wanted to keep them into the backside. They wanted to
Yeah.
keep them in the admin department. They don't want to see in the forefront of, because that was affecting their brand. That was affecting. But this was like Dalit Suri Foundation, Lalit Group of Hotels. They actually took this as a challenge to put transgender people at the forefront and saying that listen, we are part of the LGBT community and this is our big statement that we are trying to keep. Then WHO report came that if you deny transgender people, LGBTI people from the corporate industry, how much loss that you can face,
Yeah.
because you're losing pink money big time. And that really started changing. So last 5 years, I've been seeing a lot of changes happening into the corporate sector. Still, we are not there, Ali. We're still
Yeah.
not there. We don't have HR policies. We still don't have reservations for transgender people because transgender people are trapped into the vicious circles. We don't have
Yeah.
enough educations. And when the companies expect us to be employed, they expect the graduations and post graduations from us, or at least a
Yeah.
diploma. And we don't have that. So the job that we get is like worth 10,000 or 12,000 rupees. Even a person who clap on the signal can earn 100 rupees or 200 rupees a day. So for them, it is an easy thing. That is, they would say that why would I, get invested into this? Because if this company rejects me, I cannot go back to the begging. I cannot go back to the sex work where I've left it. So the fact remains is we still need to have some extra effort when it comes to the corporate engagement. I just
Yeah. You brought up a couple of things that I want to explore. So one, Amit, Abhina kind of name checked the Lalit group of hotels, right? And I wondered, I mean, in your work in the advertising industry, what impact, positive or negative, do D&I policies, or in this case, the Dalit group's very explicit posture towards employing trans people, like what impact does that have on a company's brand equity?
Well, I think any effort towards DNI, especially in the world that we are in, and especially in the world that we are moving into, any effort, any genuine effort towards D&I is definitely going to impact the brand equity of a brand or an organization positively. But that's what it is. There's a very thin line between saying that we're doing something and actually doing something. Because there are a few organizations, I won't name them, who have started their D&I chapters, and kind of they tick the box. But that does little either from a brand equity perspective or for even other measures that the organization itself may want to look into, because I think D&I, the way I look at it, or the way we look at it, that it has a direct correlationship with productivity, with internal productivity and efficiency and morale and everything, and not just outward reputation and outward equity. And if you're not doing that sincerely, if you're not doing that with authenticity, then the either of the engines don't fire. Neither does it work internally, nor does it work from an external brand equity perspective. And organizations, when they're embarking on their D&I journey, I think the urgent and the more immediate need is for them to not embrace it as a face to show, but as something that they truly believe in. And see, a belief must cost you something, um, and I believe you have to put something at stake, and you have to show that you've got skin in the game. Otherwise, it's just shallow. It's just talk.
Very well
Right.
said.
Right. One of the other things that Abhina mentioned, this, and it really struck a chord, because so we did some research, in with regards to LGBTQI people in the corporate space, and 50% of our respondents said that they come out at least once a week at work, right? But Abhina, something you said struck a chord with me, because as a cisgender man, and I present as a man, I sort of can control when and how the narrative is shaped, right? So I choose to be out, and when and I'm in a very kind of client-facing role, and I am always out there, and people in Southeast Asia are just as nosy, I guess, and constantly ask me if I'm married and what, where my wife lives, and I out myself, but I have to do it repeatedly, right? And it takes a psychological toll, but that's not what I wanted to pick on. I think what I wanted to test with you, and Ankita, maybe you can take this question, which is, if you're not presenting in a way where you can blend in and then you have control over the narrative, what impact does that have, in terms of your relationship to the workplace?
Mostly I would say that it's very important, it's very difficult to fit in in a group of people. Maybe you will be over invited, or maybe you'll not be invited at all, right? When I talk about over invited, there will be things like, oh Ankita, you're a lesbian, you look so cute. If I were a girl, I would have dated you. No, sorry, if I were a boy, I would have married you. Or if you were a boy, I would have married you, right? So
I
that
would
is
have married.
invitation, that you are just being over friendly with me for no reason. I want you to be neutral. If you're talking about makeup, involve me in as well. I will also talk about it, because it doesn't matter if I'm not doing it, you will not involve me in it,
Correct.
right?
Absolutely.
So the basic thing is, in terms of, I'm talking in terms of organization first, then I'll talk to client base, then I'll talk being a leader in an organization. Okay, so when I be in a group, people do not know how to include me in their conversation. People do not know what to talk to me about, and mostly I feel that people are scared also to ask some questions. I would say that somewhere, when DNI is becoming a dialogue, it is becoming a learning, a mandatory learning for each and every individual who is working in corporate space, right? Because there is a continuous pressure of leaders to the HR professionals, and then HR professionals to team, that you have to be inclusive. So in the journey of learning, they are scared to ask doubts. So what I do is, basically, I tell people that I'm open to all the questions. Even if you want to ask any stupid question, I'm ready to answer. It's okay that you have knowledge, rather than not asking that. And do not be scared of me. I will be able to help you out in that journey. That is my individual journey in terms of being in a corporate space. Second is client journey. Whenever I go to a client, I always estimate that this client might not have 100% of information about me, or about our product, or about our services. So what I say is, as I'm working in LGBTQ space myself, I refer to my product saying that I am also from a queer space. So when I talk about this product, I came out to them saying that this is my product and I'm out about this, and why I'm doing this, this is the reason. And then I give that context to my customers, that how I can make this conversation more like a sensitization session than a selling pitch. Whenever I get into a call with a client or any meeting with a client, I have the intention of being a person who can sensitize them rather than taking business from them. So when you sensitize them, automatically they understand the product, they understand you, they understand LGBTQI, and then they go ahead with the same. So in terms of clients, I'm not facing, honestly, not an issue, not even once. And I've been people, I have asked, there were people who asked me some questions, Ankita, how did you come out? Then they get a little personal to know about my journey itself, and I do not get offended about it, because they might have seen the first person who's a lesbian, right? And even if I see an Apple product, right, if I'm seeing this AirPod, I'll touch it and I'll feel it, I'll see that how does it work. So I believe that even if anyone's asking me question and being out and they are judging me, it's something that I can change. So I should be an open book. So being as a leader, I'm always been out, and it has already helped me, because there are a lot of micro individuals who are not even out to even one person. They feel safe with me. I'm very out on LinkedIn. Like there are a lot of IT working professionals. Like IT is such a field that people are not even out, right, because of the issues which has happened post from last 3 years, that people are hardly being out, even if they're gay or even they're lesbian, because they're scared that they're out of the company. And that's not going to happen now, but still they choose to come out to me. So for me, it has not been a very big issue after I came out, after I started accepting myself, throughout the journey of me working with multiple clients. But in college, yes, it happened, and I'm very glad that I could change it. And I would just say that until and unless I am not accepting myself, and I'm not accepting people to question things from me, how I learn.
It's an amazing mindset to have, right? This idea that you can use your position of influence and actually change. Aditya, we heard from Abhina about kind of trans women representation in mainstream corporate spaces, right? Can you talk a little bit about trans men representation in mainstream corporate spaces?
I think trans men are they are marginalized under the marginalized community. Transgender is a marginalized community, and trans men are marginalized under that marginalized community. The reason is that the notion of the society, when they think about a transgender, they will only picturize or visualize trans women. They cannot visualize trans men to be a part of the transgender community. Now, many times what has happened is that a trans men, they face a dual discrimination. Before transition, their birth order and sex is a female, so they face that the marginalization from there, socially or historically, that a lot of people want to work in a mainstream society, but or want to work, but the families are not allowing. The society is not allowing a women to work. So that is one major discrimination they face. Second thing, what happened is that once they transitioned, the companies, they are looking for hiring people based on their DNA agenda. They want visible representation, and who is a visible representation there? A trans woman. Because a transgender man, they does not fit into the DNA token representation. I would say, I would be very vocal and open about it, that if a trans man identify themselves as a man, because that's their identity, and then it does not fit into the DNA agenda, that token representation is there, no, it doesn't fit into that.
Yeah.
So also anyway, we have a less representation for trans men because of the discrimination before transition. After transition also there are discrimination. Also it happens is that though I transform into a man, I have done my surgeries, but I don't have that strength. So when when there are the physical working conditions, when that requires 10 to 12 hours of a hard work, core labor work, it's not possible. And we tried, like as a tweet, we tried to place a lot of people. I don't want to name organization here, but we tried to place people there. But because of this physical working condition, they cannot survive.
Correct. Very true.
And
Amit,
yeah, and
go ahead.
the only option is left with a lot of trans men is to do their own uh, small business, like opening a shop of a momo and it actually it's much more, because there also you'll earn 10 12,000. And why you have to go with that discrimination, and that's a dual discrimination. You have to always be aware that, okay, I have not gone through a surgery, I can be discriminated, or I can be molested by men also, and I can be molested by women also.
Can I add, Ali, to that?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So Aditya, well said. I think, Ali, I think to your question, we have two different kind of perspective. The one perspective is about the people who fit into the gender representation, binary gender representation. So, for example, as you spoke about yourself, or Amit, or Ankita, or for a larger sake of it, person like Aditya will also be not identified unless and until somebody actually get into the skin of Aditya and understand that you are a trans man or something like that, because you fit into the binaries of the world. Now the situation start for trans women where they are not fitting into the binaries of that. On other spectrum, we are visibly invisible. So you want to see us, but you don't want to acknowledge us, you don't want to count us, and you don't want to include us. So on DNI agenda, we really miss out on those perspective also. That because for various countries, having a trans woman which is not fitting into the binaries of the world, it becomes a very difficult perspective for them. Because I'll give an example. So we did a training of beauty parlor for some trans women in Mumbai. I'll give an example. And then we tried to place them into the L'Oreal, that parlor and all those other. So they were of the opinion that it will affect our clientele, because we may put a person over there like you, but the fact remains is the client may choose whether that client would like to come to you or not, and as a result of then we will end up having a lesser clients in those perspectives. So having a person who's also out and open there, which is not fitting into the binary, can also disrupt the business of the perspective. It depends upon how committed organization or institution is to put the transgender people. That's what I was trying to say, to put the agenda on the face rather than hiding it. DNI agenda has to be on the face rather than hiding it. So if you want to really hire a trans person, you have to go you have to go a little beyond of just the general commitment. And as Amit said, that we should not use just a tick mark kind of a perspective using DNI, but you have to create a statement. You have to create a statement from the highest management level to say that here we are employing and we are not employing. I don't want to be hired just because I'm a trans person, right? But at the same time, I want to be hired. I do want to. And if you miss out on that important criteria of creating reservations for trans people within your organization, I will never be able to get hired, because I will never be able to match up with the education qualification that each of you are having, probably, because I'm not privileged. I'm not been included. I've not been part of the DNI of the education system. I'm not have enough resources. I right now, if I don't earn today, I don't eat. The cost of living for me as a trans woman is almost 3 times higher compared to any of you, because you can go to any of the dining spaces and eat food. I cannot. I still remember that in Kerala, which is the highest literate state of India, I was denied admission by 17 hotels in a row. Just because I am a trans person, I look like a trans person. For them, it was a nuisance to having anybody in a hotels deciding into the spaces. In the malls, if I go, there are guards who follow me with the presumption that if this person is entering, this person is going to steal. This person is going to create nuisance within these public spaces, which is accepted by everybody, but not welcome to this person particularly, because this person is there. I become a mockery if I go to a cinema hall while everybody if I'm watching a movie, like people who are around me probably would change the seat or would keep looking at me about what am I doing. If I travel into the public transport that includes aeroplane, people change their seats because there is a huge amount of discomfort with associated with people who don't fit into the binary, and that's
Uh,
where the challenges begin for people like
and
me
Yeah.
who are in
again
the
adding
public.
to what Abhina has said, like I know as a part of tweet also we were placing few people in an organization. I don't want to name this organization publicly, but we had that organization had interviewed I think a few people, and then there were a couple of trans men who were fitting the qualification. There was one trans woman, and they hired a trans woman. When I asked them what is the reason for hiring this person over these two people, they said that they are visible to our agenda.
Yeah.
I
And
have noticed
I think
relatively
that's really quite disappointing, and I
yes,
completely I feel what you're saying, what you're saying, and Aditya, and I think any organization that has kind of like I was talking about earlier, any authentic DNI program, especially one that is focused on trans inclusion, should make sure that it's not just sort of trans women, but equally importantly, I can completely empathize what you're saying,
Yeah,
Aditya.
yeah,
The double whammy that you feel, that you go through, which is sort of being a woman on the first hand before your transformation, and then being a trans man, which makes you sort of the invisible face of DNI, and hence people not willing to sort of
yeah,
commit to your growth.
yeah,
And I mean, for what it's worth. We started DDB Transit and I'm sorry for the shameless plug-in, but that's not the intent at all. But a couple of months ago, we actually started DDB Transit, and thanks to Keshav Suri Foundation, Keshav himself launched it. Uh, uh, and the idea of DDB Transit is actually to sort of really uh, taking from what you also said, Abhina, that most people from the trans community actually don't have the discrimination starts from the education system, and there is not as much access to education. So then when you come to, there's no level playing field to begin with, and when an interview process or everything's done, we can't begin with the assumption that people from the trans community will be equally sort of qualified. You will have to give in certain allowances and sort of invest in them such that they learn on the job, and sort of kind of organizations need to invest in sort of filling that void or filling that gap, which lack of a proper education in some cases, or in most cases for the trans community, sort of is felt. And what DDB Transit actually does is it invites people deliberately from the trans community, regardless of whether they identify as a trans man or a woman, into the organization with an intent, and it's a focused program where we want them to learn the tricks of our trade, which is advertising. And we've got our first intern actually, Swapnil, who identified herself as she, has been interning with us now for almost a month now, and we're really looking forward to what comes of it. So I mean, it's a lesson for me, for us as well. So if it didn't occur to me in as much force before I heard you, Aditya. And I think from our perspective, I'm definitely going to make sure that it's not just the visible face of trans inclusion, but also the invisible face of trans inclusion also finds a place in at least in our organization as we go forward.
Thanks, Amit. Ankita, I know you wanted to say something.
Amit, so just adding to the point what Amit have mentioned, inclusion have there are many angles to inclusion, right? There is a PWD angle of inclusion as well. There is women inclusion as well. But mentioning to PWD, why I'm getting this point, you'll understand that when Amit has mentioned that there is um, there is some void as well. So we also have to focus in this panel discussion, which is always been ignored, that there are a lot of people from LGBTQ community comes under PWD spectrum also, which is
very true.
not just physical disability, it is mental
Yeah, yeah,
disability as well. right? So whatever we all have gone through in our lives, right? Like Abhina have mentioned, Abhina is strong enough. Abhina might have crossed these boundaries by herself, but there are a lot of people who are very sensitive. They cannot take that much of pressure from the society. They have been going through a continuous harassment, continuous bullying, and also continuous rejection, right? This continuous rejection has started from the day we have realized our sexuality, or maybe if their gender expression has been different, right? So the growth of these individuals are definitely different than the crowd which is at this point is placed in the multinational companies, or are in the spectrum, right? So now the thing is, usually all the corporates or some of the corporates are completely or we as an individuals also completely ignoring this point of inclusion, that the mental health should come under because half, I would say, I cannot give a number, but many of us are also a PWD candidate, where we should not get a very responsible work. There should be a time definition, so that just ignore about work. Keep a buddy system, keep a counselor just for us, just to make us move on from previous lives we had, which has been completely ignored, I guess. I believe that once this practice comes on board, right, there are a lot of things which will be changed as in an individual's life, apart from policies, apart from benefits, apart from salaries.
No, and there's a lot of statistical evidence out there, right, of the incidence of mental health challenges in the LGBTQIA community. And I mean, even just in this sample size of 5, we've heard enough, heart-wrenching stories about that. And indeed, I agree with you. I think organizations can do a lot more to create kind of safe spaces for their LGBTQIA employees who tend to have higher concerns with regards to mental health. You all kind of have all tangentially touched upon this idea of quotas or reservations, or Amit, I think you put it most eloquently, which is, an organization just being intentional about bringing in employees that may not have had the same education or socioeconomic privilege, right? So the organization needs to make an effort. It needs to intentionally try and bring them in. I'm also increasingly starting to hear the other effect, which is sometimes LGBTQIA employees feel like they're the beneficiaries of reservation, DNI reservation, so to speak, and sell themselves short, or the organization sells them short, right? Oh, you're just a diversity hire.
Yes.
And I've encountered this a few times, and then I mentor a lot of young LGBTQIA people in the corporate world, and I hear this often, right? And the advice I always give is own it. Like, don't be ashamed of it. Like, you should just be like, yeah, I was the diversity hire, fantastic, I'm here, aren't I?
Yeah.
Like, and I'm representing my community. And I think that it's an important, again, it's this idea of having a little bit of this growth mindset of saying, yeah, I'm going to own it. I'm going to own my identity. I'm going to own, I come from a background that's systematically discriminated against and systematically underprivileged. So whatever little privilege I'll get, I'll just take it.
I said I agree with you that a lot of it has to come from not a lot of it, but an equal amount of it has to come from it, just as organizations are sort of supporting. But I think it's equally important for individuals to own their narrative as well. And in saying so, I don't want to sound like the onus is completely on people from the LGBTI community, because that's unfair as well. I think if you were to talk in weightages, I think the organizations need to do much more than the individuals on their part. But yes, ownership of your own narrative, and the fact that, I mean, come on, let's talk about something like the equality from women's equality and women's right. For years and years together, here's a gender, even if we talk in the context of binaries, here's a gender that's been discriminated for centuries. And the fact is that we need to disproportionately kind of reward women and people from the trans community and people from the queer community, and that disproportionateness of what organizations, of what civil society, and what the world at large does in favor of these minorities is only just. It's only fair, because it compensates for all those years and decades and years and centuries of unjustness.
Absolutely. I wanted to, end us by inviting you all to share one piece of advice to this audience, right? And we're speaking to kind of aspiring LGBTQIA leaders and their allies. What advice would you? What one piece of advice would you want to give them? And I'll kick us off. My kind of one piece of advice is. One and a half pieces of advice is number one, don't assume ill intent. Most organizations and most corporate spaces are, at worst ignorant. And yes, it may seem like a chore, but you should take it upon yourself to educate. And think of it as investing in the next generation of LGBTQIA people, which is just educate, right? Most of what organizations do comes out of ignorance rather than malicious intent. And therefore, in that, my additional half piece of advice is just keep pushing the boundaries, even if you're doing it gently, but push the organization's boundaries when you're inside the organization. And one example, I married my husband 4 years ago. We're legally married under U.S. law. And when we came back to Singapore, I went to our HR here and I said, okay, I want to register him on the insurance plan. And McKinsey has had same-sex partner benefits since the mid 1990s, right? For the last 20 plus years. And the HR manager was like, it's not possible. And she said that because she had never had to do it before. Not because the policy didn't exist, right? And I mean, that's just one small example of where just gently push the boundary. And I said, well, actually, it is possible. And, why don't you go figure it out? And then, I'll come back in 2 days and, maybe you'll have forms for me to fill out. So that would be my one piece of advice. I'll turn over to you. And Abhina, maybe we start with you. What would be your one piece of advice?
I think one piece of advice for me is that having LGBTI agenda in your business, in your corporate sector, is going to increase pink money. It's gonna bring you a lot of credibility, brand value, and at the same time, it is going to take a right decisions, not just because you want to do it, but this is the right ethical decisions. If you are denying a person based on sexuality and gender, that you are actually hampering his or her or their human right, civil right to earn with the dignity. Many times situation doesn't hit us till the time we don't have any LGBT person part of our own family. So don't wait till that point of time. You just have to open your eyes and open your ears. You see the entire globe is changing. We are metrosexual more and more, and we are actually creating spaces for each other. We do coexist, and I think you have to take that one big step to create a statement by saying that is, here is our company. Here we have clear inclusive policies, and we are determined to make sure that nobody is discriminated based on the gender or sexuality within our organization. We create those spaces. We create a better world. And it gets better.
It does get better. Aditya?
I think one for the community, I would say that one is that like a lot of time we are so victimized and we have faced a lot of discrimination that we set into a victim mindset, and that does affect us. And every time everything is happening, we start relating to our sexuality or gender identity. And I can say that because I asked this a question to one of the person who said that my ideas are not getting accepted, and I asked that question: is it because of your gender identity or because of your ideas? So one thing you need to work on that, and for the community to be neutral for yourself. Don't get in either extreme. Don't get too harsh on yourself. Don't get too lenient on yourself that, okay, I've been discriminated against for everything. Of course, I understand everyone gets discriminated, but don't set into that victim mindset. One is that. And to corporate, I would say that you don't know where to start. Just start with one is to educating yourself. A leaders should start with, because it should be always a top-down approach. A leader should be committed for this. If a single person, of a DNI person is committed, it's not going to change the organization. If it is not coming from leadership, so the leaders have to committed towards it, and have to educate themselves, and then you start hiring people. Even if for a token representation, if every company will have a token representation and have two people in their on the board, then also will ease the burden from the other company, and we'll have a lot of job opportunity. And we have this notion that we will in an employee referral program, if you see, we will refer to people who are homogeneous pool of people. I will refer to the same people. So if you have at least two people or three people, they will refer the same people, and then how you can't start hiring 50 people at stretch. How to start with one or two people. So start with that, but don't set there. I have done token and that's it.
Correct.
But start with that.
Thanks, Aditya. Ankita?
My advice would be half for the community members and half for the companies. I'll start with the community members. With the, whenever an individual is trying to make things better, trying to take an initiative to make things better, even though they do multiple mistakes, stand there for them. Make them know, rather than pointing things out. Let them know that, Ankita, you're going wrong here. Ankita, slow down. Ankita, this is how you should do it. That will be appreciated. And if those efforts are taking on the courtesy of being upset or being jealous or not acknowledging it, that then it's a bad part. As a community, we are a team. And whatever I do, we do, and whatever you are doing, that we all are doing. So we have to be together to make this one. DNI is not anyone's individual, what we say, individual's achievement. It is going to be achievement as a whole. So even if a small person is taking any initiative, even if he or she or they or them is young, guide them, support them, and do not judge on the basis of the age they are having. So as a part yourself, start being inclusive yourself. So are you inclusive, not just for LGBT? Are you inclusive towards PWD community? Because we come under DNI spectrum. You need to understand the verticals of DNI. Are you being including yourself? That's one. So start working on yourself to be more inclusive and open to ideas, and supporting each and everyone, and not bullying, not being harsh on anyone, because we already have a lot of things going on in our lives. We don't want to hear from the same community people, right? We have to figure out things for each other. That's one piece of advice that I would like to give it to our community people. Now comes to corporates. I will say thanks to Aditya to rightly mentioning it, that taking a step, and as he mentioned that yes, it will start from the leadership. I totally agree that the leadership has to be in, and it is okay if it's taking time. I would say that a company should focus on the metrics. Now you say numbers. I've hired 10 people from the LGBT people. Oh, I'm inclusive. No, please have a metrics of your inclusion on the stability of the queer person, rather than the numbers of being in your organization. How many years this person has spent with you, how many years this person have raised the complaints to you, and have those metrics on the basis of the comfortability of that person in an organization. And second thing is, people say yes, they're allies, people say that they want to make a change. So start inclusion from home, right? Are you inclusive? Are you okay with your son or daughter being gay or lesbian, or a person is trans person in your house who's just newly born, and or an intersex child? Are you inclusive yourself? So start from home, then expect people from your team to do it, then expect leadership to do it, and then expect as a company to do it. So DNI is an individual's journey. Please, let's not spectrum it on school, colleges, or corporates. Let's just start from ourselves. That, are we inclusive? Are we inviting people to our parties? Are we telling them to dance with us? So it's just a journey. So slow it down. It's okay. Support each other, love each other, and guide each other as much as you can. Ask questions if you are facing any difficulty to understand, and ask us out. It's okay. Personally, I'll not be offended. So Thanks. And also it gets better. And whatever KSF is done so far for for the community in India, I really, really appreciate that. And these are the things, whatever I'm speaking right now, right? It's because of my youth leadership program that they have made us say that, are you inclusive yourself? Are you doing any, are you having any community phobia, any phobia in yourself? Then people came out saying that I was phobic to this, I was phobic to that, and then they
Yeah.
clarified it. So it's very important that even if our friends, even in my friend who's a lesbian, who's somewhere transphobic, I have all the responsibility in my hand to change it, not with the anger, not with the fight, not with the hateful comments on Facebook, with the special talk, with the personal talk. So
Yeah.
not cross the boundaries of that. So that's the piece of advice for everyone. Thanks. It was
Thank
not
you.
one, it was two, three. Sorry for that. But
just have human conversations. I love it.
yeah.
Um, Amit, you get the last word.
Well, I have two pieces of advice actually. That one is, and both from an organization point of view. By the way, I loved what you said, Ankita, about inclusion begins at home, and often enough it's a two-way process. But having said that, from my end, it'll be two things. One is the first step is for any organization. I think it's impossible or irresistible for any organization to say no to the future. And uh, from an organization perspective, I think for those of you who would be familiar with the service profit chain, an organization's present or its future is dependent on its people. If you've got the right things going for your people, then everything else falls in place. And the first step that you should do, whether you're a leader who's taking on the kind of mandate of DNI, or even a young person in the organization, that it's incumbent on you, and it'll help you a great deal if you build a picture of the future for your organization. These are the people of the future. Look at the conversations that are happening with young people today. Look at the kind of cultural evidences that you can build. Look at the kind of statistical as well as cultural evidences that you can build for your leadership in the organization. That if you want to participate in this future, DNI is not an option. It's something that you will have to do for survival. Forget for flourishing. I think that's the one fundamental argument that you need to build. And the second advice that I'd have is, when it comes to DNI, it is a new area, and a lot of people, even though they may have the desire and the meaningful intent to start it, they hesitate, thinking, uh, oh God, how am I going to do this? I don't know enough about it. I don't have the education in this. Will I be able to build the right argument? Will I be able to get the right support? Will I be able to get the right allies? It's okay. Nobody knows all the answers. The best DNI experts don't have all the answers. And hence, my one advice would be just start. Even if you start really small, it's fine. Start. And perhaps, I'll try and rephrase perhaps what you said, Aditya, that it's not about, I mean, what you said, that, even if it's about tokenism, I'd still not want it to be tokenistic, but start small. Even if it means that, hey, you just sort of, put badges of a pride parade in your office, even if it means that you've kind of that's done something really small. Those small little steps, those small little efforts, when they aggregate over time, and you start, you have, every DNI person has their own learning curve. uh, so don't be intimidated by this thing that I'm not an expert. It's all right, nobody is, you know.
Rainbow lanyards. Um,
Yeah, when I said that start with token, I didn't mean that stop with
No, I
that.
know.
Start with that, but don't stop
Yeah,
there.
don't stop there.
yeah.
Absolutely. Listen, I recognize that we're at time. I would so love to keep this conversation going. And indeed, we will find future opportunities to continue this dialogue. But I did want to just end with a very happy anniversary birthday to the Keshav Suri Foundation, and a note of gratitude for convening this. Right, this is such a wonderful conversation. And it's been an absolute delight to speak to all of you this afternoon. Um, a huge thanks to our panelists, to Abhina, to Amit, to Ankita, and to Aditya. And I wish you all a wonderful rest of day and a fantastic weekend ahead, I guess.
Thank you everyone, and thank you, Ali, to you for steering
Yeah.
the conversation so wonderfully.
Yeah.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
day. You too.